Okay, welcome. Today I wanted to offer some reflections about dissociation and about resilience. As leaders, what are we teaching? Are we teaching resilience, or are we actually in fact teaching dissociation? So enjoy. A couple of days ago, a colleague of mine introduced me to the work of Chris Barez-Brown, and he was talking about resilience, and someone had asked him to teach about resilience in their company, and he said no. He said, I'll teach brilliance, but not about resilience. And as I was reflecting, I commented, I see that most of us, what we call resilience nowadays, I actually see as dissociation. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about this today, and why actually, if we're dissociated, well, this doesn't help. This ends up leading to burnout for people who work for us, or for those that we're in contact with. And I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. So if I begin with just the definitions, really. So if dissociation, this is a protective survival mechanism. It numbs, distances and suppresses emotion or sensation in order to cope with threat. So that's dissociation. And Bessel van der Kolk, the psychiatrist, in his book The Body Keeps the Score, he says dissociation is the essence of trauma. So are we traumatizing people? We're not doing that on purpose, but I just see at the moment that we're forcing people to work, keep going, keep taking more punches was one of the words Chris mentioned. And it's like, really? And so what resilience is, and this is, if you look at the work of Emma Seppala, who wrote the book The Happiness Track, a brilliant book. I really love that. It's been a Bible of mine for almost 10 years. She says, no, she doesn't say this is something separate. A definition: resilience, by contrast, is a relational capacity to feel, to regulate, to recover, and to re-engage from a place of grounded wholeness. And I really see that, what we're doing in these companies at the moment in society is we're saying to people things like, don't take things personally, stay calm under pressure, don't let it affect you, be professional, meaning don't show your emotions, maintain performance in high pressurized environment. So it's almost like we're always on. We're always we've got to be at peak. And while we talk about resilience, actually, for me, resilience is about being on and then being off. Emma Seppala in the Happiness Track, she says, we have this perception in the West about excitement. In the East, it's more about being calm, and that's obviously based, she says it quite a lot, on religion. This in the West, it's a lot to do with Christian, kind of a lot of excitement. And in Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, it's a lot about being calm. And actually we need both. Yes, we need some excitement, but we need to spend most of our time in calmness in order to not burn out. So when we do this, when we say to people, just keep going, you take more punches, we just end up numbing ourselves emotionally. Some of the other things, we ignore that we're exhausted, we're not sleeping, and we just kind of keep going until we can't get out of bed. And that's what happened to me in my 20s. I'd been basically pushing myself solidly, and then I couldn't get out of bed anymore. Literally, it was like, I can't move. And my body was just like, enough. I'd reached burnout. So, what I'm seeing now is what resilience is, and what we should be modeling, and what we should really be calling this resilience rather than the dissociation that it actually is we've got to acknowledge the stress. It's like, yeah, I'm stressed, and honor it, feel it. It's like, bring that mindful awareness. We're using mindfulness in companies at the moment to increase productivity for the company. not for the well-being of the people, but actually it needs to be for the well-being, because a company is essentially people, and we're forgetting that. So I think we've got to acknowledge the stress, and I love what Kelly McGonigal says. It's like, reframe it. We've got to acknowledge, yeah, I'm stressed, and then she says reframe it, see it as a good thing. Another is feeling your emotions. That's part of resilience. Like, as many of you know, I've been grieving my wife over the last few months, and at the beginning it was intense. I was crying all the time, and it's gradually got easier, but I still cry from time to time, maybe a couple of times a week. I see something and tears come, and it's that honoring. I've got to feel this, otherwise it's like I'm splitting and it's not dealt with. Another thing is rest. Resilience is kind of Jim Law in his work in the 90s with peak performance. He says you've got to go on and you've got to go off. It's like oscillate on, 90 minutes on, and then have 20 minutes off. That's what I've just done. I've just been for a run. I've worked a couple of sessions, meetings, and then, break. Then I'll go on again. I'll have a break. So we've got to rest. Otherwise, if we're just on all the time, we're not creating resilience. What are some of the other things? Community as well. Another thing for resilience is we can't do it on our own. We've got to have connection, group, people around us. And often if you're in a position of leadership, you're at the top, you feel totally isolated. That's why I'm setting up this Compassionate Leaders Pathway, which is a online training, a group setting for leaders, and it will be a 3-month program. We'll check in each week. It's like, to find peer-led support, and it's so important, whatever that might be, whether I've had support through the Mankind Project or through Scouts, or we have to find community that helps to create the resilience. We stay connected to others and ourselves. And then the final part of, for me, resilience is psychological safety. This is becoming more and more into companies. They're realizing that companies are really thriving when there's that safety. There's the example of 3M, who came up with post-it notes, a lot of glue and other tape products. And if they make a mistake, they tell everyone, and then it's like, I've got this glue which doesn't work. Someone says, I'll try it. And that's how post-it notes came about. That's psychological safety. And that's kind of resilience for ourselves. We've got to be free to be us, be vulnerable, to be authentic. Yeah, I'm grieving today, I hurt. Okay, I'm grumpy. No worries, welcome. But we're not allowing that space, So, just some reflections. I think things need to really change with leadership and around resilience. Is, we can train in resilience. And what Emma Seppler talks about in her book is this idea that stress is, you can't talk your way out of stress, but you can breathe your way out of stress. You can move your way out of stress. Feeling really stressed? Go for a run, go for a swim, do some exercise, breathe. And she quotes the example of Pierre Philippot and his experiment just with breathing. When we breathe shallow, that's a stress. We're in fight or flight. Deep, shallow breath, that's relaxation, that's calm. So just by modeling that, we can then change our nervous system. So just some thoughts there. What do you think? Can you have you been in a company where someone said, you need to be resilient, you need to keep pushing? Or are you in a company which is very much more emotionally intelligent? Or are you looking at society and going, oh yeah, they're asking us to be resilient, but actually it's just dissociation. Keep going. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for your support. And tickets for Edinburgh are still on sale. and also for West Yorkshire for the Boarding on Insanity screenings on the 27th and 28th of June. So please do, I'll put the links below. You are able to buy tickets there. Okay, take care.